Welcome to the Managing the Smart Mind podcast with your host, Coach Kramer. Episode 11, Clearing Out the Clutter in Your Head. This week, I am so inspired by a wonderful conversation I had with the fabulous Maisie Hill about what it's like to be autistic. We talked for over 2 hours and found we had so much in common. It's an interesting conversation. It's an interesting way to look at how you can live your life with a very different brain. Do check it out on her podcast. It's episode 73. I'll leave a link in the show notes so you can find it and also check out the rest of her amazing work. Now, on the podcast, we talk about how one of the reasons we both thrive is that we have designed a life that works with our smart, neurodivergent minds. Somehow, instead of making ourselves and our specific needs wrong, we have, and still are, turning things around. We are designing our life experience to work with us rather than against us. And by the way, this took a lot of work in coaching. This didn't happen overnight. So this week, I want to talk a little bit more about how you can do that too. Because trust me, it's so much easier, not to mention sustainable, to design a life that works with your beautiful mind instead of trying to make it work in situations where your brain simply doesn't fit. But to do that, you first need to be aware of all the clutter in your brain, all the voices that make you wrong for being who you are. So let's take a step back and look at where all this trying to fit in to be normal originates. When you have a smarter than average mind, your brain often operates in non-average ways. And some people tend to think those ways are wrong, and they will try and correct you. Sometimes this is because they mean well. They love you, and they think you can't be happy if you're different. Which, by the way, reminds me of the brilliant autobiography by Jeanette Winterson, one of my favorite authors. Why be happy when you can be normal? Seriously, go read that book. It's so good. And sometimes people do not mean well. They're bullies or scared to be around anyone who deviates from the norm, or actually probably both. But whatever their motivation is, they will, over the course of your life, inundate you with messaging that tells you to stop being so damn different and start being normal so we can all feel comfortable again. And if left unchecked, this can actually result in an intense internalized ableism where you are constantly berating yourself for all the ways in which you experience the world differently. Sometimes even for your basic needs, like needing alone time away from your loved ones, for example. Now, how do you figure out what you have in there? What kind of clutter is up there in your brain? Well, to help you unearth yours, here are some examples of all that unsolicited, quote-unquote, advice I have received and internalized over the course of my life, followed by my own current take on the same situation. Don't be such a wuss. Well, actually, loud sounds simply scare and startle me. You have the attention span of a squirrel. Well, there are so many more interesting things to think about than what's currently happening on the blackboard. You can't keep doing one new thing after another. Well, actually, my brain needs to keep learning new things to not start misbehaving. Life isn't supposed to be fun. Well, I love that I experience intense joy when I'm in my zone of genius. You shouldn't stay in your room alone so much. It's not healthy. I love my own company, and I really need alone time to recharge. Stop being such a smart ass. I really like sharing my knowledge with the world. You're incredibly lazy, young lady. No, I'm just very bored by what you're teaching. You're emotionally underdeveloped. I'm simply not interested in the games some people play. So what about you? What have people told you over the years? Do you need to be more sociable? Do you need to get executive tasks done faster? Do you need to stop asking difficult questions? That embarrass people because either they don't know the answer or they do, but they really don't want to tell you. If you're not sure, start watching your inner chatter because it tends to echo the voices you have internalized. And I want you to pay special attention to thoughts like, I'm so selfish for not wanting to go to that party. I'm such an idiot for not reading the room. I can't believe this is taking me so long. I've made such a mess of my life. I'm such a spoiled brat. Why can't I just play nice? I just need to be more courageous. I should be so tired after such a simple thing. Self-deprecating thoughts are usually borrowed from parents, teachers, and other authority figures. Which means they're totally optional, even if it doesn't seem that way. For a long time, I thought I really needed to stop being so scared, to focus harder, to stick to one thing, to create a schedule, and again, stick to it, socialize, make friends, be more disciplined, learn to like people and things I simply didn't like. I thought there were so many things wrong with me, and I was working incredibly hard to fix them. It didn't work, because this is how I'm wired. Trying to change who I was not only didn't work, it was also very painful. So eventually, instead of trying to change me, I changed my life instead. I slowly started to create a life in which I, with my smart mind, could thrive. And surprisingly, the biggest hurdle wasn't so much imagining how I wanted to live and then realizing it. It was to give myself permission to even desire it. Because at first I felt I was just being really difficult, a bit of a diva. And again, I had all those internalized voices telling me that I should just try harder to be normal. Well, that simply isn't going to happen. I can't be normal, but I can be me and make my life, my work, my relationships work for my authentic self. So what does that currently look like? Well, I have my own very spacious studio where I think, I play, I create, where I coach and teach, where I actually nap when I need to. I have work that is constantly challenging, changing, fascinating, that allows me to grow and learn new things every single day. I can actually own being smart and even revel in it. I can dance and jump around when I'm incredibly happy or excited. I can network and socialize in a way that works for me with amazing other smart humans, mostly online, because that's what I like. I can spend a lot of time looking at art, which inspires my creativity and nourishes my entire being. I can also spend a lot of time looking out of the window or pacing around my office, because that is what helps me think. I have a family who love me as I am and know when I need some space, sometimes before I do realize it myself. I know what I need to thrive, and I'm able to make requests without shame or guilt. Now, this didn't happen overnight. I needed to learn so many things to create this. Getting back in touch with what I really wanted and needed after years of conditioning that had taught me differently. Learning not to believe those voices. Learning to make requests and set boundaries. To feel and process very uncomfortable emotions. To no longer hide my gifts. And learning to make a living in a way that lets my talent shine and energizes me. So can you. The first step is to find your own voice and to weed out all the others that keep telling you all the ways in which you are wrong. This week, become an observer of your inner chatter. What are you saying to yourself on a daily basis? And do you even believe any of it? Or are all of them borrowed thoughts from your past? If it's the latter, release them so you can make room for what you want and need. And then get to work designing and creating a life that suits your authentic self. This is part of the work I do with my clients, building a life that plays to the strengths of their beautiful minds. It's so much fun. If that is something you're interested in, reach out to me via my website, coachkramer.org, or send me a message on LinkedIn for a free first consult. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. I love that you found this podcast, and I also know that there are millions of gifted minds out there that still need better management. So if you like the podcast, I would love it if you could share it with your smart coworkers, friends, family, so they can find it too. Also, if there is a specific topic you'd love to see covered or someone you'd love to see interviewed, let me know on podcast@elsakramer.com. And don't forget to subscribe if you like this podcast. I'd love for you to leave a review so more people can find it and learn to manage their smart mind. Until next week. Bye-bye.